evening. This is the only part that I have had planned, is that I would come up and see a dream, a vision made to life, and I would probably just cry, and that's it. So, goal accomplished. But I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. Just coming is the first step, and it's just beautiful. I want you guys to look around tonight and see that there are other people here. Each one of us have had our own stories or journeys, or know people that have had stories or journeys. Somehow, we've all been affected by loss. But you're here, and I want you to look around and see that there are other people that showed up too, and that you are not alone. Tonight, we're going to share several real-life stories of our own personal walks. And maybe it's not exactly your story, but maybe you can definitely relate in some way. And so I just want to welcome each of you. Please go ahead and silence your cell phones. Let this be for you tonight, because it is. It's for each and every one of you. So my name is Alissa Cowan, and I am the recent founder of a local nonprofit called I Am Seen. And it's called that because as you're saying it, I want you to know that you are seen, that you are not alone in your loneliness and your story. So it was February 23rd, and I was 2.5 months pregnant. And I started to bleed, and my husband was out of town for work, and I was just like, I'm fine, I'll be okay, nothing's really going on, it'll be okay. And it started getting worse and worse throughout the day, and so I was off and on the phone with nurses and doctors and calling back to my husband to let him know what the updates were. And it finally came to the point where they wanted me to come in for an ultrasound. And so I called my husband and let him know. And in a drive, it was the middle of February, so there was snowy, icy mountain passes and lots of deer. And it was a drive that should have taken 3 hours, and he was home in 1 hour and 45 minutes to take me off to the ER. It was late at night. The normal doctor's office would be closed. And so he came home, and I had been on the toilet all day long with just blood. And I wanted to stand up and show him that there was more blood than water in the toilet. And I stood up, and this tennis ball sized tissuey mass came out. And I thought, that's not good. And so we hurried and got to the ER, and it was a really busy night. They didn't have rooms available, so we were put in the hallway on a bed, and we went in to get an ultrasound done, and I looked at the screen, and it was empty. It was blank. And we had ultrasounds before to know that that is not normal. And we looked at the technician, just asking what's going on? And she couldn't say anything because it had to be read by the certain certification person, but she kind of looked at us and gave us a little nod. I'm like, doesn't look good. So we went back to the hallway, and we were seen by a doctor, and he just said, you have had a complete miscarriage, which means there's no sign that you've even been pregnant. And I was in slow motion. I was numb, I was shocked. I didn't know what to think and what to do. And we left empty-handed. My husband brought me pajamas. Usually after having a baby, I would go and get my fuzzy pajamas on so that I could nurse. And he still brought me pajamas, and we left the hospital at midnight that night. Empty-handed and alone, we were driving home and trying to contact anybody to let them know what had happened. And it was just a spiral of isolating, not being in our norm. We weren't okay. And even when, after a few months, we went back to our normal circles of people that we normally associate with, it was awkward because it was like, do we tell them that we had a miscarriage because they knew, or do they already know because they heard from someone else? There was this awkward back and forth because they didn't want to say anything wrong to make us feel bad, so they didn't say anything. So it was just like silence on both sides and lonely. Who do you relate with at that point? Who understands what you're feeling? And I kept trying to make myself grieve because I'm like, I just lost a baby. So this is really awful, this is really hard, this is really sad. Feel it, grieve it, come on. Like I would sit in my bath for hours just like trying to cry because this is the time that I have to feel it before I need to get back and be, my normal. And it wasn't coming and I was just numb. And it wasn't until probably 3 months later that somebody told me numbness is a feeling. And that it's okay to not be okay. That it's okay to not know how to feel. And then all of a sudden, the grieving came at the most inopportune moments. When you least expect it, just this flood of tears that felt unstoppable. And through this journey, I've been learning that it's okay to sit in that for a little bit and to grieve that for a little bit. I ended up going to the Pregnancy Resource Center because I just needed somebody to talk to and somebody to cry with, and somebody there told me it's very impactful to be able to name your child. And it's hard because you didn't have something in your arms to hold, and you didn't have something to bury. And so it's like this awkward in between of hurting but not knowing how to express it. And when she said, name your baby, I thought, okay, it gives them an identity, it gives them a person, there was a person in all of this. And so not everybody knows whether it was a boy or a girl off of an ultrasound. We were just, our next ultrasound, we would have been able to tell. And so I prayed about it and was like, okay, what is it? What was it, Lord? And we just my husband and I both felt like it was a boy. And so we named our son Micah. And it's super special now because when we talk to our other children, we say Micah and they know who we're talking about. So it's been 5 years since I had my miscarriage. And just a year ago, one of my good friends also had a miscarriage, and I broke all over again. I thought, I've acknowledged it, I've sat in grief, but it was just fresh, like a raw wound opened all over, like it just happened yesterday. I called my husband, screamed, crying, just shaking, and he came home from work to try and comfort me. And in all of this, the Lord gave me a poem that I shared with my friend, and I want to share it with you tonight. It's actually a prayer, and you have a copy of it in your bag. It's called A Prayer from the One Who Never Got to Hold You. Almighty God, the one who holds life and death in your hand, my heart is aching for this little child you gave and then took away. I do not understand. The waves are heavy and deep in the ocean of sorrow and loss. This burden is too much to bear alone. How do I take up this cross? How do I talk about this? Where are all the others who have felt this pain, who will understand? Where are my sisters and brothers? Isolating and hurting, Yahweh, Lord, minister to me. When people are silent and don't know how to talk about it, meet me in my time of need. I know you are a faithful Father, and all things work for good in your hand. But why did you allow this to happen? How could this be part of your plan? Retracing our steps to tell those who knew of our little one inside. Sorry for your loss. Try again soon. At least you have other children. Who can I really confide? The wounds cut deep inside of my empty womb. Give me hope through the sorrow I will bear tomorrow that comes from the Lord's empty tomb. God, you are alive. You know me well, and you see into my heart. Even though I don't know how this story will go, show me where to start. Help me to grieve, to feel, and not run. The baby you gave me to carry has a purpose and a name. Was it a daughter or son? When we meet again someday, I will hold my baby in my arms, close and comforted, with no fear of harm. I am hurting, Yahweh. My body did all it could have done. It was beyond my control, and now my baby is in the arms of Yeshua, Jesus, God's only Son. Precious life I cherish, held deep inside me for a short time. Now we are apart. I will always carry my baby within me with the love inside my heart. And that's with love and commemoration for my precious little baby Micah. I'd like to invite my husband, James, up, and he's going to share with you from a man's perspective.
So, a lot of people say, it's a woman's problem. She's the one who had a miscarriage. Get back to work. Don't talk about it. Sorry. Get over it. Yeah, what's there to say about it? That's about all you hear. And as you'll hear from myself, as you will hear from someone else tonight, it hurts. And even though guys are much harder to let their hearts out, they still have hearts. And so when I got that call from my wife, I remember right where I was, and the words were simply, they said I need to go to the ER now and maybe call an ambulance. And I was literally on the other side of the mountain pass. I double checked with an officer friend of mine just to make sure I could say this, but I averaged a little over 90 miles an hour coming over Santingham Pass, Tombstone and Santingham Pass. Because it was that, I was trying to do everything I could to get there, because it sounded like not just the baby's life was at risk, but my wife's life was at risk. And that urgency to help is such a strong drive, and it's not something that you feel very often. But that drive and that passion to get there is something that I still remember. But that was just the first stage of what I went through, was how do I get there? How do I help save my life? Then it came to the realization when I got actually there and got in the house, that there was nothing I could do to help. I could be there with her, but at that point, I physically had no way to stop this problem at all. We got to the ER, as she had mentioned, we did see the birth and death of our little one. But when we got there, I wanted to help. We wanted to see what was going on, what can I do? And when there's nothing that you can do, as most parents know, as most people who have ever loved someone know, when there's nothing you can do, it is extremely difficult to stand there, and that is a traumatic event in your life. So we found out, literally in a hallway in the middle of St. Charles with 10 other people walking around us, that there is no baby. The baby is gone. And that then switched my role again. It was now, how do I comfort my wife? This hurts, but that doesn't matter right now. It doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter how I hurt. How do I comfort her? And that is something that is inconsolable. There's no way that I could reach out and solve that emotional pain, thus leaving me again unable to help my wife. But all I could do was stand by her, and I continue to stand by her and try and comfort her. And there came a point several days later when she was crying that I couldn't comfort her. She didn't even want me to be next to her. She wanted me to hold her, but she didn't want to see me. She wanted to have me there to comfort and talk to her, but yet she didn't want to talk and she didn't want to hear me talk. And so you come through these ways of, it's a very, very rough road of how do you get through the emotional battles in here. Eventually, though, we got to a point where we can talk about it. We're obviously here talking about it to you today. But inside of that, there comes a point, as I started with, of, well, it wasn't your body. You never held the baby. What's the issue to you? Why is this so hard? Get back to your own work. Don't talk about it. Don't mention it. It doesn't really matter. Your story doesn't matter. What's affecting you doesn't matter. Miscarriage doesn't matter. Losing a baby doesn't matter. But it does. And so, a lot of guys won't talk about it, but you need to. You need to be able to share about it, because once you get inside and once you start actually trying to deal with it, I'd spent the last year trying to help my wife. I'd spent the last year trying to help my children. And I'd spent the last year stuffing and packaging everything I felt away. And what I gotta say is that it made me angry. It made me frustrated. It made me hurt. And quite frankly, there's times when you just gotta deal with stuff. And how do you get to that point? Finding someone to talk to about it is helpful, but quite frankly, sometimes you just gotta beat the shit out of something. And guys, it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to take your anger out on a bale of hay. It's okay to take your anger out going to the shooting range, or spending time with other guys going out there and finding a way to push yourself physically so hard that you're able to break into the emotional and actually be able to find some healing there. Because it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be at this point of, I can't do anything and I feel horrible about that. But the thing is you gotta be able to go into those emotions to move through them and actually find some healing there. So at this time, we're gonna take a minute, I'm gonna step off stage, and you guys are gonna get to hear some audio tracks. These are 2 stories of people who have gone through painful experiences, losses. Some loss they intentionally put themselves in. One of the stories is about abortion that person chose. The other one is about a loss that someone didn't want, but yet it still happened. So this time we're gonna go ahead and play those stories.
So I'd like to take a moment and talk to you fellow men out there who think that the masculine thing to do is to buck up and just to move on and not to think about it, to shove it down into a place where you don't have to acknowledge or address emotional sides of loss. Know that it's okay to mourn. Know that it's okay to stand up and to say and speak your heart. And know that it's okay to hurt. I still hurt every day, but I still live on, and I still thrive to be a better man than I was yesterday. We all have a choice. We all have a free will. I felt mine was taken. I felt that I didn't have the opportunity to give that precious life an opportunity to grow and to be someone significant. And that was very difficult. That also, my heart needs to be understood, and that I have a story as well, and that it's important that I've carried this weight for 23 years, and now I'm getting this opportunity, just like you will have this opportunity to give and to share and to be real. So today, no matter where you are, what you're grieving, what you're questioning, it's okay, because that will lead to a healing and a peace and a freedom that was intended for you and I to have from the very beginning. But it's going to hurt, but know that in the end, your heart will be healed. That you're not alone. There is somebody that's around you that will be there for you. All you have to do is ask.
My name is Nicole. I've had 2 abortions about 15 years ago, and I would like to share my story with you. The man I was involved with, we had been dating on again, off again for, I can't remember how long, and he was my first boyfriend, first everything. One of the times we had gotten back together, I discovered that we were pregnant. He was excited, in his words. I was not. I was surprised, scared, nervous. I had this man telling me that he loved me, but he'd go and hang out with other women. I didn't know if I could trust him to be there for me, emotionally, financially, to be an equal partner in it. I also grew up with in-and-out parents. Both my parents were homeless at the age of 14 and didn't really know how to take care of kids. So I was almost, I'm the oldest sibling, so I was kind of like the mom in the scenario. And through that experience, I also was sexually abused as a kid. And I thought, based on all that data, it would be better for the child to be in heaven than it would be to go through what I had to go through. So that's the main decision for having that abortion. My boyfriend at the time was sad. He wanted to keep the child, and that made me sad. But the untrust overrode the sadness. I couldn't trust him. I couldn't trust anybody. I can share my story, and I choose not to live in shame anymore. I am seen.
My name is Jess, and like many of you here tonight or watching online, I also have experienced the devastation of grief and loss. One of my earlier experiences occurred when I was 22 years old. The person closest to me, my younger brother Ryan, passed away tragically in a car accident. It was 3 weeks before his 21st birthday. The torment of losing my only sibling led me down a dark path of severe alcohol addiction. I went to multiple rehabs, but it always ended the same, in despair and relapse. It was during a relapse that I experienced a sexual assault, which resulted in pregnancy. Throughout the time I was pregnant, I did not experience many emotions. Looking back, I realized that I was numb. I had relapsed and blamed myself for being in a situation where I had blacked out drunk. It was my fault. I ultimately came to this decision to terminate my twin pregnancy at 8 weeks. Once this occurred, the emotional floodgates opened. Feeling both relief and regret simultaneously was confusing. I felt alone. I felt isolated. I didn't know anyone else who had made this decision. This was not something that people talked about. And if it was, it typically resulted in strong judgment, controversy, intense opinions, criticism, and hate. I spiraled further into alcoholism, which ultimately led to more trauma, and the cycle of addiction and trauma continued for many years. Through support groups, community, faith, family, lots of therapy, as well as a 1-year residential program, I was able to process my grief and trauma, and I have maintained complete sobriety for almost 7 years. I have had the privilege of sharing my story in a variety of settings, but the truth is I can be quite guarded and I struggle with vulnerability at times, but these are stories that deserve to be shared and heard. I love the quote by Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist and survivor of Nazi concentration camps, in which he states, "In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice." Little did I know, almost a year ago, this quote would take on new significance in my life when my son, Josiah, was born prematurely. For the briefest moment, Josiah was laid on my chest, but I knew something was wrong when the doctors and nurses quickly snatched him away. No one explained to me what was happening, and all I could see was the look of horror on my husband's face. I had some complications during childbirth and sustained severe hemorrhaging. Therefore, I was not very coherent at the time. They took Josiah away to what I assumed was the neonatal intensive care unit, or the NICU, and my husband went with him. I was forced to stay behind in the delivery room by myself, receiving a few extra hours of care, not knowing how Josiah was doing. After missing the first 5 hours of my son's life, I was not prepared for what was next. Seeing my helpless little newborn on the CPAP machine because he could not breathe on his own, with a feeding tube down his throat and hooked up to all the wires and monitors, was only the beginning of some of the most challenging weeks of our lives. Even though the doctors let us know that there would be a NICU stay upon his birth due to his prematurity, there is nothing that prepares you to see your baby fight for his life and not knowing if and when you'll ever be able to take him home. My husband later informed me that when Josiah was born, he took one breath before he stopped breathing. They had to spend some time on Josiah in order to resuscitate him. As he watched it all unfold, he thought that we were most certainly were going to lose our son. It is with so much gratitude I stand up here and say that I now have an almost 1-year-old who is happy and healthy. We did not lose him, and I am so thankful to have 2 living children. Even though we did not have to go through the pain of losing Josiah, we experienced a lot of grief throughout his birth and his NICU stay, which now I come to understand is birth trauma. The loss of having a quote-unquote normal birth, the first snuggles, breastfeeding, being discharged from the hospital with your baby, that was not our experience. And a lot of Josiah's firsts were done by medical professionals. The most painful part we had to grieve was the ability to be a complete family. It was agonizing to have our family be separated. We had to balance our time with Josiah in the NICU and our 2-year-old daughter at home, who did not have the ability to understand what was happening. Due to COVID restrictions, she was unable to even meet her brother for the first 3 weeks of his life. Our hearts were torn in 2 places, and it felt like we were always abandoning one of our children. It was during our NICU experience that I spent a lot of time reflecting. There was nothing I could do to change what had happened or the outcome. But I felt overwhelming empathy and heartache for all the parents and family members who go through trauma, grief, and loss. Some of the parents would be able to take their baby home, like we were with Josiah, but that is not everyone's reality. There is not enough support for parents and families who are grieving, whether it's through infertility, miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, multiple losses, abortion, termination for medical reasons, the loss of a twin, stillbirth, birth trauma, SIDS, birth defects, and the list goes on. Families deserve help and support. You deserve help, support, and to believe that there is hope for healing. Part of my grief process was to change the trajectory of my career. I had been practicing in the mental health field as a licensed professional counselor and as a certified alcohol and drug counselor, recently starting my own private practice. However, it's been through my recent lived experience I developed a new passion and felt compelled to earn my certification in perinatal mental health. I now provide support to parents and families throughout the perinatal period, focusing on pregnancy challenges, birth trauma, as well as grief and loss. Postpartum Support International is the professional organization I am a part of, and it's the first organization to offer this type of certification. It has only been offered since August 2018, just 4 years ago. 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. 1 in 160 pregnancies end in stillbirth. 10% of babies born require support in the NICU, and up to 46% of people identify with having birth trauma. With these prevalence rates, it's astounding to me the lack of resources. And that's part of the reason why we're all here tonight. We are here first and foremost to honor and remember the lives of our babies because they matter. And we are also here to offer you support and hope. You matter and we see you. Whether you are a parent, a partner, a grandparent, a sibling, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, or an acquaintance, we see you. Not only have you experienced the loss of a baby, but there are so many other losses that go along with that. The loss of the future, loss of identity, loss of experience of pregnancy and childbirth, the loss of having a carefree pregnancy, loss of feeling healthy and normal, loss of control, and maybe the loss of closeness with your partner. Maybe you would have had a newborn at home with you this holiday season. Maybe you wanted your children to be close in age. Maybe this was your 5th and final round of IVF. Maybe you planned a vacation where you were going to be 6 months pregnant and now you're not. For grandparents, maybe you're seeing your own adult child in pain and you are concurrently grieving the life of your grandchild. For partners, maybe you feel like you aren't allowed to grieve. because you need to be strong, and you weren't the one who was pregnant. Birth and death have been a part of life since the beginning. It's the only thing that every single one of us will experience with certainty. Why then, as a society, are we so ill-equipped to even have the language to talk about it? This is especially true in the United States, where we live in a culture of positivity. There's a stigma around perinatal loss, in which the loss is not acknowledged, it is minimized, or it's taboo. Not being allowed to express painful emotions, having the attitude of just put on a happy face, or sweeping heavy and difficult situations under the rug further complicates grief. Many of us have been told one or more of the following by a family member, a friend, or even a medical professional. You are young, you can try again. At least you know you can get pregnant. At least you have another child or children. At least you weren't that far along. It was a false positive. This is a routine medical occurrence. Everything happens for a reason. It's for the best. You chose this. You can always adopt. It's time to move on, and time heals all wounds. Even though most people have good intentions, those statements are typically extremely hurtful, invalidating, and it minimizes the loss. It can cause further feelings of isolation and being misunderstood. Medical terminology itself can even imply blame. The very term miscarriage means to not carry the right way. It might feel like your body failed you or that it's your fault. Was it something I ate? I forgot to take a prenatal vitamin. That must have been it. I was working out too hard. I had too much caffeine. I stopped caffeine abruptly. Those thoughts might be going through your head. Sometimes there's guilt about choice, which is especially true for those who terminate for medical reasons, which is a very personal and controversial decision. Oftentimes, parents feel as though they can't disclose the decision to terminate, but rather choose to say they lost the baby to avoid negative judgments from friends, family, and the general public. This only compounds grief and feelings of guilt as they struggle with not being able to be open with their story. Experiencing a pregnancy loss or the death of a child is different from other types of loss because it is out of order to what is typical. It might be described as grief and trauma together. Developing PTSD is not uncommon. Flashbacks and nightmares, avoidance of those who are pregnant or events like baby showers, sleep problems, and hypervigilance are just several potential symptoms. So what can we do? If you are someone experiencing loss, it might be helpful to attend a support group or see a therapist who is trained in perinatal loss. Developing rituals, such as celebrating birth dates or acknowledged death anniversaries, might be meaningful. Also know that you are not crazy and you are not doing this wrong. There is not a correct way to grieve. In fact, some grief models that we were taught are completely false. Many of us were taught that grief has 5 phases: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Although we certainly can experience all of these, they are not distinct and separate. A more beneficial model associated with grief for perinatal loss is called the dual process model of coping with bereavement. This model acknowledges that we go back and forth between loss-oriented activities, such as crying, talking about the loss, looking at pictures, those types of things, as well as restoration-oriented activities like hanging out with a friend, watching a movie, and laughing. Allowing ourselves the time and space to focus on the loss, as well as permission to take a break from it, is the basis for this dynamic and healthy process. Now, if you're a person who is supporting someone through a loss, I encourage you to say things like, I know I can't take the pain away, but I am here to listen. I can be here to distract you if you need it. I'm here if you want to tell me about it. Or simply, how can I support you? Even though my brother's death was over 14 years ago, the pain is still there. My parents' pain of losing their son is still there. 14 years later, it is still there. To this day, his friends will reach out to me and tell me stories, and I cherish those moments so much. Having others acknowledge the pain doesn't add to it, it lessens it. I encourage all of you to share this burden if you are able. Grief, illiteracy, and avoidance must be replaced with compassion and connection. Hold space, provide validation, listen. Don't try to fix, don't judge or criticize, don't say time will heal all wounds, or anything else that is cliche. And if you have said or done these things, it's okay. Just apologize and change your approach. We are all learning how to heal together. In some ways, I no longer regret my decision to terminate my first pregnancy. If I had not, I doubt Josephine and Josiah would be here, and I can't imagine my life without them specifically. At the same time, a part of me will always long for my 2 children who are not living. My twins would be 8.5 years old if they were here today. Their names are Gwyneth and Evangeline. The truth is, time does not heal the pain, but we can use time as a container to do our grief work. So now, we will take that time to honor and remember our children. So last year, I had the opportunity to go to Las Vegas and attend a candlelight vigil with some very special family. And it was an organization there named Jalen's Gift Foundation. And experiencing that was my first realization of, I felt validated and I felt like we put a stake in the ground that this was a real life to be honored. And so tonight, we're here to commemorate your baby, to remember. And I don't know if you knew this, I just learned this last year, but October is the National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Month. Didn't know that there was one. And today, October 15th, a year ago today is when I went to that candlelight vigil and learned that October 15th is the National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day. So thank you for coming. And at 7 o'clock, all around the world, people in their own time zones light a candle for their little ones. And so tonight, I invite you to please look in your bags, and you have a little candle in there. And also, so we're going to light our candle together. We'll dim the lights. But before we do that, I also wanted to say, after we light our candle, we'll take a minute, just 1 minute, to be silent together. To validate you, to remember your little ones. So we'll light the candle, have a moment of silence, And then afterwards, you also have a wooden heart in your bag, as well as a black marker. And my husband's gonna come up here, and we have names that people have when you register. Some people put their names, but they've named their babies, and he's going to read those aloud to commemorate the little ones. And in your bag, you have a marker and a wooden heart, and you can write your baby's name, you can decorate it, and just kind of take that moment to remember. So let's go ahead and grab our candles, and we'll light them together.
It's amazing how 1 minute of silence can be super quick or can be super long. So the names I'm going to read are all real babies. They're all babies that a mama got to hold for at least a short amount of time. Micah Cowan, Leonora Gwynn, Janae Peterson, Neil Cowan, Ronald Card, Norman Childs, Jasper Ryan Friend, Baby M, Hunter Buckley, Gwyneth, Evangeline, Trinity, Amelie Bukuni, Alexander, Mia, Rose, Adriel, Noah Gabriel Hinton, Andrew James, Carson Jameson, David, Elizabeth, Abby Autumn David, James, Joseph Albert Cowan, David Patrick Cowan, Kelly Ray, Christopher Stephen, Maverick, Mackay, Maylin Mathers, Elijah, Violet, Lily, Rose, James, Haven, Malachi Xavier Smith, Autumn, Peter, Grace, Mark, Daniel, Lisa, Tikva, Sarah, Luke, Joseph, Jason, and to the unknown baby boys, the unnamed ones, the unnamed baby girls, we recognize everyone's baby, whether you've named them or not, whether it's been one miscarriage or it's your 26th miscarriage. At this time, as Alissa said, if you haven't, take a minute to write your baby's names on the hearts. And we'll now go ahead and I'd like to bring you up to a story of hope at this time.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so grateful that you're all here. My name is Rachel Feriend, and I live actually in Redmond, so I'm pretty local. I feel really blessed to be here tonight, but it's also just very devastating, obviously, because it means that either we or someone we know close to us have lost a child or children. And it puts us in a really difficult position, right? A really precarious position where the question, how many children do you have, is very difficult to answer. My appropriate answer, the society appropriate answer would be 2, but the truth is that I have 6 kids. Each of my losses, I know like your own, are very tragic and unique. But tonight I'm going to share with you the story of my sweet Jasper. My husband Charles and I were pregnant, and at our 20-week ultrasound, we found out that we were having our second baby boy, and we were elated. We named him Jasper Ryan Feriend, and we couldn't wait to just tell the world. It was the summertime, and it was a busy month of a lot of birthdays, a lot of summer barbecues. And finally had a moment to sit down on the couch and just take a breath. And I look over at my husband, kind of perplexed, because I realized I hadn't really felt the baby move in a while. And so we kind of poked and prodded like you do, and nothing really happened. And so over the next 24 hours, I became increasingly concerned. I went in 24 hours later for my just normal 24-week appointment, and there was no heartbeat. I walked over to the hospital and gave birth to my son on July 12th, 2018. And he was stillborn, and he weighed 1 pound, 13 ounces. And he was perfect, and he was sweet, and he was gone. Gosh, it just still hurts, right? His loss really wrecked me for a really long time. I fell into a really deep pit of despair. I was crying, I was numb, I was angry. I started drinking and I stopped sleeping. I suffered from chronic headaches for a very long time, all just in the difficulty. I'm a Christian, and I'll openly profess that, and I know so many stories of Jesus bringing children back to life. And my husband and I, we just prayed and prayed and prayed for a miracle, and it just wasn't meant to be. Even up until the moment he was born, I hoped that they would just whisk him off to the NICU and somehow he would live. And it just didn't happen for us that way. I felt completely abandoned by God, and I felt completely betrayed by my body. And I was like, how could I be so powerless to help him? So we picked up our son's ashes from a funeral home, and the tin was the size of my fist. And there I was planning a memorial service and packing away the brand new onesies. And I felt as if a piece of me had died. And there was no clinical reason actually for my son's passing. You know, the doctors drained my veins, tested me for everything you can possibly think of. There was nothing wrong with my son and nothing wrong with me. We had just lost him. And some people have reasons and some people don't. It still hurts. So I was just left there without any explanation and just so much sorrow. You know, grief, it really is a funny thing. You know, it's completely against your will. It forces the expansion of your soul's capacity to feel. You never have you known such sorrow, such sorrow and anguish could coexist with such love. And grief looks a lot like pounding the steering wheel till your hands bruise, and sobbing in the bottom of your shower. Just staring off in the middle of the night, wishing you could shut your brain off. I think so easily we can come to a place of desperation where we're just hoping one day we'll wake up and the pain will be gone. Or maybe that good things will start to happen again. You know, and we can have a pretty good idea of what good looks like in our own lives. You know, I did, a child, right? A son, a pregnancy that goes off without a hitch. And they're all really good things. But I'm not the author of good in my life. The Lord is. And He is goodness Himself. And the good He has in store for us may look a lot different than what we anticipated. In the midst of grief, there really truly is so much blessing and so much to be thankful for. And so many blessings that the Lord continues to pour out. You know, if we fix our eyes on our sorrow, that's all we're going to see is the darkness. And I've lived there, and I'm sure you have too. I've lived in the dark. But if we fix our eyes on Christ and His many blessings, our circumstance probably won't change, but our perspective does. Where there is grief and sorrow, there's also joy and certainty, right? Our babies are in Christ's arms. Max Lucado writes, what you have in Christ is greater than anything you don't have in your life. You know, grief is human, right? We all grieve all kinds of things. And it comes upon us in all unique ways, and it hits hard, but our joy can be rooted in Christ as we cry, and our hope is in our Savior as we mourn them, and our faith is strengthened as we move forward. As my husband and I navigated our grief, you know, in completely unique ways, we found very little help, which I'm sure many of you have felt that way. There's not a lot out there for people experiencing stillbirth. You know, I even found myself like searching on Pinterest, like stillbirth, you know, and Lord knows where else, because I was just searching for some sort of peace, some sort of acknowledgement. And we finally got to a place where we decided we needed to offer help. We needed to be the ones to offer help. That's when my husband and I decided to start the Jasper Fox Project nonprofit organization. And I'll tell you kind of how that came around. So my sister-in-law, seeing me in just complete tears and deep grief, she took it upon herself to help me. She sewed this beautiful handmade fox, and she weighed it 1 pound, 13 ounces, and she gave it to me the day before our memorial service for our son. And I was completely blown away. When I held that fox in my arms, It's like a piece of my boy came back to me. It's like I remembered him. I knew what he felt like. And I knew that other women needed that too. Because I have a lot of mascara on that fox. And I slept with that thing for like 2 years. I mean, it is not as pretty as the ones out on the table. But it sure is well loved. So that's what I do now. Myself and a handful of volunteers, we sew these handmade foxes and we weight them to match the exact birth weight of children who have passed away, and then we send those to the family. Every single one is unique. Every single birth weight is so unique. And we're matching it exactly. We're filling empty arms. And I will be honest, it's not gonna fix it, but it helps. I've never felt so lost than when I lost my son. But this is the Lord. Incredibly enough, I found purpose in his passing. And my pain has been eased by the joy that I see in my life now, and by the purpose that I have in the kingdom of God as I serve others who experience the grief too. Sorry, I'm so sniffly. The Lord does say that, or Psalm 23 says that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for the Lord is with me. And we have walked through the valley of the shadow of death. Tonight, the Jasper Fox Project is going to be donating 5 foxes to this Remembrance, and 5 individuals in this room will be contacted by me personally so we can personalize a fox for you or for a loved one. And we truly believe, like my husband and I truly believe, that these foxes are a huge stepping stone in the grief journey. They're such a sweet remembrance. And we've actually, just this August, we've been operating for 2 years. And we've sent foxes almost all over the United States and internationally. We all know that people have no idea what to say to us and no idea what to do. And we're giving people, our friends and family, the right thing to do for us. And I said earlier that if we focus only on our sorrow, we're only going to see the darkness. But Psalm 31 says this: "Be merciful to me, Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes grow weak with sorrow, and my soul and body with grief. My life is consumed by anguish, and my years by groaning, and my strength fails because of my affliction, and my bones grow weak." And I can identify with that. Right? I felt that despair. But God is good, even in our sorrow. Because the psalmist doesn't leave us there, right? Psalm 31 continues on. It says, "My times are in your hands. Praise be to the Lord, for he showed me the wonders of his love. Be strong and take heart, all you who hope in the Lord." I know this, that the Lord cares about every single one of our children. Every single one. And he has cried tears along with us. I think at one point I did think that the Lord was so callous and mean, but I see him as a savior who weeps alongside of us. And who's just, "I'm sorry this happened. I'm sorry." What a sweet, loving savior we have. He is gentle and loving God who can restore. And the Bible says that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted, and that's us. And that he saves the crushed in spirit. That's the promise. That's our promise. To be near to us and to save us. He can turn mourning into dancing. He shows us such great love even in our pain. And we are wholly seen by God. I would like to close by saying I truly am sorry for every loss that's represented here. But I'm thankful that our hope is in Jesus Christ. I'd like to pray this over you if you would bow your heads with me. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. Amen. I just want to say thank you to the gals that shared their stories and the men that shared their stories tonight. It's taken 9 months to plan this remembrance. I think that's very significant. 9 months. And after our loss, I remember praying. It was just like, Lord, what is the good in any of this? You promised good for your children, but what is the good in any of this? And now 5 years later, I'm starting to see the good. The fact that we can come together and put a voice to the silent grief. The fact that we can see that we're not alone. And out of this, in April, we started a local nonprofit called I Am Seen, which does that very thing. We want to bring people together to be able to mourn the losses and to support each other. And having this remembrance is just the start. And we started these care boxes, and we've just, I'll show you here, we have a table out there, you can see them closer. But it says, I will hold you in my heart until I can hold you in heaven. And our goal is to put this in the hands of every woman right after they've had a loss, right after they've lost their little one. We have a sample box right now at St. Charles for review. They're looking over it right now, but we want to get it into birthing centers. We want to get it into any person's hand that needs it, that has lost their little baby. And on the inside, we have a beautiful care package from Ben's Soap Company that has some milk bath in it and a sweet little travel bar and a lip butter, just to focus on self-care during grief. We also have a beautiful candle that has a special label on it for the mama, and there's a handkerchief, and we have a Bible in there, as well as a letter about grief from myself, and a little heart pendant, like is what's in your bags, with a poem. And it's just something, my heart behind that is so that women can leave not empty-handed, that they have something. And our story is in there as well. And so this has become our project. Our goal was 200 boxes, and we just had our first packing day where everybody came together and made the 200 boxes. Now our next goal is 300 boxes. So we're gathering right now to make 300 boxes. And I want to give one to each of the women tonight that have lost their little one. So if you're here when you leave, please come and see us out at the care box table. We'd like to give you one of those. So first and foremost, I just want to say thank you all for being here, for showing up. Thank you also to our sponsors, to the Ben Soap Company. They placed little travel bar-sized soap in your bags tonight, just to remember to take care of yourself during grief. Also, thank you to the Jasper Fox Project for donating those boxes, and to the Pregnancy Resource Centers of Central Oregon, because without you, this project may not have happened. They have come right alongside of us and just saw this vision and helped us run with it and make it come to life. So thank you. So for this project, there's various QR codes you'll see out there. We have refreshments in the commons area. We welcome you to enjoy some cookies and water afterwards. And there's QR codes and also a box at the box table. If anyone wants to help support this, that we would have a future remembrances. We're hoping to make this an annual remembrance, as well as to get these care boxes out there. So if anyone wants to talk with somebody or share your story or get some prayer or anything like that, we're going to have a few people over here on the right side, under the exit sign. If you just want to talk, if you want to pray, for whatever, we're going to be over there too. So again, thank you everyone for coming tonight. We just validate you and we just remember your precious little babies. Thank you.